Welcome to Coconuts TV again. It's the 7th of February 2014 and we're in Cambridge at Russell Crane's house talking to Russell about his memories of Abbey United and Cambridge United. So Russell, you're a Cambridge boy, aren't you? You grew up in the city.
Yeah, well, thereabouts. We moved to Cambridge when I was 3 years old, so that's as good as being a Cambridge boy. Yeah.
And when you were growing up, were you a supporter of either of the clubs, Abbey or Cambridge Town?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, Cambridge United. Well, Abbey United then. Yeah. It was that all the way. I mean, it's only up the road, wasn't it? You know,
Where were you living at?
I was living across the road in Ditton Walk. Yeah, almost opposite here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're aware of the club as you've grown up, and you used to go there.
Yeah. Yes.
And your father, Herbert, he actually worked for the club apparently in the late 1930s, early 1940s.
Quite. Yeah. Yeah.
And what did he do at the club?
Well, he was sort of jack of all trades. I mean, I think they all there was a nucleus of helpers, all voluntary work, and they used to, fill in whatever job was wanted doing. Like, I mean, he used to bring the shirts home for a start, and my mother used to wash them, and he used to hang out on the washing line,
Yeah.
And we used to take the gate money, used to finish up at my house or my father's house, and he used to count it out, fill in the bit of paper and take it down what then was the National Provincial Bank, St John's College.
Oh, okay.
What was
Trinity Street, isn't it?
Trinity Street, yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then you joined the club. You made your debut. You were only just 15. That was 1941 during the war.
Yeah.
What was it like at the club during the war years? Was it hard to keep it going, or what was happening?
Well, they were not allowed to publicise anything, They so there was no reports or no comment in the papers about the football matches that were going on. Otherwise they would have closed the ground down, but there was Army and Air Force bases all over the place, from Waterbeach up to Marshalls. There was a place just before you get to Marshalls opposite the cemetery on Newmarket Road. And places like Bassingbourne and that, they had airfields, and they were full of Army personnel, Air Force personnel and that, and they all had football teams. I mean, football was the main sport, and I suppose they were pleased to play whoever, they were pleased to get the use of the ground for a start. And there were a lot of good footballers, a lot of well-known footballers like Dixie Dean, and I have a job to remember them now. I think Alex James was down here. It's going back a long way.
The Arsenal player.
Yeah, and also the gasworks. There used to be a big gasworks here, and on Newmarket Road, and they used to have a married versus singles annual game, and that was always up there.
Right.
I can remember going, first of all going to these games and then participating in them and playing. It's I was always mad on football. It's even from the first day I went to school at Fen Ditton. Took a ball with us and kicked it all the way there.
Yeah. And what do you remember of the ground in those days? It was nothing like what it is today, of course. What did you have in the ground?
Well, the changing rooms were on the opposite side to where they are now, and they were just a little hut. They were like a shed more than anything, with a corrugated asbestos or tin roof. And eventually they built a little lean-to out the back, and they there was the home team and the away team with the referees place in between.
Mhm.
And they dug the floor up in the referee's room, or half of it, and put some tiles down to make a bath. And they had an old coke boiler out the back. They used to load it up, and so we used to be able to get a bath
Yeah.
after the game, like, you know. But it was very, very.
Yeah. And when you made your debut, what sort of crowds would be going up there? What sort of...
Funny enough, I've been looking in one of these papers, and it's surprising. The crowds were 4,000 and 5,000.
Yeah.
Probably not when I first started, but when we progressed into the the United Counties League, first of all, wasn't it? From the CAMS League to the United Counties League,
Yeah.
and then we joined the Eastern Counties League, and that was the time that we used to get the good crowds,
In the Eastern Counties. Yeah.
4,000 and 5,000, yeah.
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 And what sort of relationship was there with the supporters in those days? Is it like nowadays where there's a bit of a gulf between players and supporters, or is it a closer relationship?
I would say it was a closer relationship, yeah. I don't think there was this... I don't think we were expected to win like the club is now. The club today is, there's all the build-up and all the hype from media and television and that sort of thing, isn't there? And clubs are expected to do better than they really do, you know. And I think that's what upsets the supporters today, but it wasn't quite as bad as that in my day. But,
Okay. Well, in 1943 you were called up to the Navy, weren't you?
yeah.
Although apparently you played it when you were on leave. You
Yes,
played a few
yeah,
times
yeah.
when you were home on leave.
Yeah.
So what were your war experiences? Where did you go? And while you were away, did you keep in touch with other players?
Not so much other players, because they were, at that time, they were sort of changing fairly regularly, but
Yeah.
I joined the Navy, and as a boy, really. I was 17 when I went in, and I spent 2 years, I spent time on a destroyer, HMS Ashanti. Funny enough, when I joined HMS Ashanti, I was sent from Chatham Barracks to Plymouth to pick up this ship, HMS Ashanti. And as I got to the dockyard, there was a boat there ready, and I hopped on the boat and off we went. And it was a boat that takes orders. They don't signal the orders to the ships. They take it by boat and written, I suppose, so it can't be picked up by the enemy, like, you know. And although my parents thought I was still in Chatham Barracks, but I was about to join a ship and go out to sea. I mean, the ship was under sailing orders when I got there, and I got on board, and out to sea we went. And it was, the exercise there was called HMS Tiger. So not HMS Tiger, Operation Tiger. And it was a dummy run on the south coast, which had been evacuated, and all the people had moved out of the houses. And we went through what was going to happen on D-Day, because D-Day was imminent. And unfortunately, the Americans took, the Americans took part, and they had, it was their troops that were going to go ashore. So the idea was that ships like HMS Ashanti would go in closer and bombard the shore, and then the landing craft would go in from the bigger ships, the big American ships. But the Germans got wind of it and they intercepted, and there was close, it must have been nearly 1,000 Americans killed. It was terrible, that. And that was my first experience of going to sea.
Goodness me.
But following that, after D-Day, we landed on D-Day, and the operation we were doing on HMS Ashanti was no longer required because the Germans were being pushed back, and their warfare, their submarine, their sea warfare was ceasing, and I got to HMS Ashanti, went in dock, and I was sent out to Australia, or sent out to the Pacific, and first of all to Australia. And I went out from Liverpool across the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, and across the Pacific to New Zealand, and then on to Australia. And then, as the war progressed in the Pacific, we were sent up to Hong Kong to pick up another ship, HMS Wimrel, and from there on, the Japanese war was being won, and the Japanese were about to surrender, and our job was to go round all the islands, what they call showing the flag.
Okay.
That's to let the Japanese soldiers and that know that the war was over, And then when I came home through the Indian Ocean, through the Red Sea, through the Mediterranean. So I went right round the world.
So you really have
Yeah.
circumnavigated the globe. Yeah.
Yeah.